Hello, everyone. My guest today is Tom Wright. He's the founder of Cascade Strategy. After seeing firsthand how bad most organizations are at taking their strategy from PowerPoint to reality, he wanted to see if he could bring an affordable technology solution to solve the problem to market. Tom, are you ready to take us to the top?
Absolutely.
All right. Cascade Strategy. Tell us what the company does and what's your revenue model. How do you make money?
Sure. So it's a B2B SaaS model. So we have an online SaaS platform called Cascade. And what we do is we help companies turn strategy from being something that's very conceptual into something that they can actually measure, tie back to performance, link revenue goals to, et cetera. So it's everything from the planning of the strategy, the day-to-day management, and then all of the dashboarding and tracking solutions around that plan as well.
And then kind of how do you price? Is it pure play SaaS?
Yeah, so it's 100% SaaS. So it's a monthly software subscription. We do annual as well. So you can kind of get started from as little as like $26 if you're just an entrepreneur looking for a place as your strategic plan online, through to our kind of largest enterprise deals that are sort of, six figures plus.
That's great. And help us understand. So like, I know you have a huge cohort, but on average, what are customers paying per month for this?
Yeah, so the average of our new deals at the moment is about $6,500 a year deal size, but it is really, really broad range.
Yeah. When you look at, so ignore new deals, because obviously people usually have legacy people that are paying much, much less. If you just look at your total base to date, what are they paying on average per month or year?
Yeah, so they pay about, it's probably just under 5K on average across the base right now per year.
Okay, so you haven't moved your price point upstream too much.
No, we did. We start off at about $20 a month, and then for enterprise customers now we're charging about 48. So we have doubled it. The business model has evolved a little bit. Originally, we were kind of shooting for really, really large organizations, bringing on kind of like thousands of people in one go from the start. What we do now is we still target Fortune 500 companies, but we actually kind of target teams within that, and then we try to do the land and expand strategy where you grow organically once you've got one or two divisions on board.
Yeah. What year did you launch the company in?
Technically, it was 2013, but we didn't really get the office till about 2014.
Okay, 2013. That's great. And then what have you scaled to today in terms of total customers on the platform?
So we just hit last month 1,000 customers. So we're up to about 1,076 now. So it's grown pretty quickly. So yeah, about 1,000 customers, and we were growing at about, from a revenue perspective, we're growing at about 150% year over year revenue, which we've done for the last couple of years.
That's great.
We think we can probably do that for the next couple of years as well.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, look, 1,000 customers paying kind of 5,000. Obviously, you can kind of per month, you can kind of back into MRR. You're doing like 450 grand a month right now, something like that.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, it goes up and down, obviously, but yeah, that's about right.
And then take us back a year, which obviously we can back into growth rate from this. But a year ago, what were you doing per month?
Well, I mean, like I said, we're growing between 150 and kind of 200%
so
year over year.
Like 180, 200 grand a month?
Yeah, exactly. It was certainly a lot less than we are right now. So the last couple of years have been pretty crazy for us.
Where's most of that growth come from? Charging old customers more, so expanding, or adding new customers entirely?
Most of it does come from new customers. So we have pretty interesting retention stats. So we kind of retain about 90% of our what we call our enterprise accounts. An enterprise account is probably anyone paying kind of more than, say, $2,000 a month. $2,000 a year, we would class as an enterprise account. So we tend to retain about 90% of those. In terms of revenue, annually, yeah. Our revenue retention within that group is about 120%. So we do get organic growth within that population. It's not kind of like explosive. We're not like doubling, the revenue from existing customers, but it has like a relatively healthy uptick. But most of it does come from new enterprise.
So Tom, peel back that 120% net revenue retention onion for me. There's obviously gross churn, and then your expansion makes up that gross to get to 120. So what is gross revenue churn per year?
So like gross revenue churn is probably equivalent to that, roughly that 90%. So we'll retain.
So that's retention. Yeah. So 10% gross churn. And then that would mean you're expanding by about 30% to get to 120 net.
That's about right. Yeah.
Interesting. Very good. And then how are you upselling? Like, how are you driving that expansion? What are the pricing axes?
So it's a per user price fundamentally. We do like unlimited pricing models for, mid-sized organizations. We don't tend to do them for the really large ones because, we've got clients like Johnson & Johnson, Bank of America, really, really big customers where unlimited pricing has an unknown risk factor. But mostly it's about getting, let's say, a general manager within a Fortune 500 company. Maybe he or she has a team of, say, 50 or 60 people, whether they're product managers or whatever, getting them to deliver at least one quarter of really provable growth that they can tie back to Cascade. That's obviously tracked in Cascade using our dashboards and things like that. And then actually getting them on board to kind of go on a roadshow within the organization and basically use them as a kind of internal sales engine. So we try to keep it as low touch as possible. Like we don't like going on site with customers. Obviously, we have customers in 68 countries, so that kind of can be quite challenging. But if necessary, we will kind of go side by side with those general managers and actually present Cascade internally as a tool that's solved a particular problem in a very tangible way.
Yeah, that's great. To get a new $5,000 a year customer, what are you spending on kind of fully weighted CAC? Will you spend the full $5,000?
No. So the vast majority of our marketing is inbound. So we have like a pretty good kind of like presence on Google. If you search for Google things like how to write a vision statement, how to create a strategic plan, really generic strategy terms, we're pretty much number one for almost all of those terms with our blog posts, our ebooks, and things like that. So the vast majority comes through that. Because of that, it's difficult to measure the exact cost. Obviously, there's a time investment. We don't do any advertising per se. We do a little bit of remarketing on Google AdWords. And
what about salaries? That's usually the biggest cost here.
Yeah, so we only have kind of like one full-time marketing person, and I obviously do a lot of the blogging myself.
What's the total team size?
About 30 people.
30. Okay, and you only have one in marketing and sales?
So we have one marketer, and then we have one salesperson based in our head office in Sydney, and then we have just added 3 salespeople over in our Portland office, but that's literally brand new as of like a couple of months ago.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like you maybe don't have a good sense of what CAC is because you haven't had to use money to make money.
There's not a lot of competition, which means you're not really competing from an advertising perspective. That also has downsides because you've got to create a value prop that people don't know exists. It's not like selling a CRM where people can see it as a commodity with, a comparable feature set or a comparable cost. But yeah, what we do, like when we look at our revenue forecast, we think we can continue to grow roughly at the pace we are, which is about 150, 200% for the next year or two with our current model. After that, we're pretty confident that we will hit a little bit of a ceiling in terms of what inbound can do. And it's at that point that we'll need to come up with really solid, kind of like cost per acquisition models involving salespeople, marketing costs.
What's capitalization look like today? Have you bootstrapped or raised capital?
Yeah, so we're 100% bootstrapped. So we put in about 50K of kind of like founder loan. And then forced us to get to profitability pretty quickly, which in B2B is a lot easier than B2C. Luckily.
Yeah, that's great. So you're profitable today? Yeah,
I mean, strictly speaking, we've been profitable from the end of the first year. Obviously, wafer thin in that we put it all back in. It's a constant balancing act. But we've deliberately avoided taking any loans or financing or capital or anything like that so far.
Interesting. That's great. All right, let's wrap up here, Tom with the famous 5. Number 1, what's your favorite business book?
I don't read any, even though people constantly tell me I should, but
that's
I haven't
okay.
had time to read one for
None. Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
Kind of similar to the first one, if I'm brutally honest. There's small ones that you would never have heard of.
Name an unknown one.
So there's a guy called Steve Latka. He runs a startup here in Australia.
What's the startup?
So they're called Venture Camp, and they help other startups grow their revenue models really, really quickly.
Great. Number 3, what's your favorite tool for building your business?
So we just switched over to HubSpot from an inbound marketing and CRM engine. We're loving that. It's very expensive, but we love the kind of holistic visibility it gives us across the customer lifecycle from marketing through to the deal close.
Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
I get about 6.
Okay, and what's your situation? Married, single, kiddos?
No, so I have a partner. So we live together, but no kids as of yet.
That's great. And how old are you?
36 years old.
36. Last question. What do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
That joining a startup was actually a realistic option out of university. So like me and all my friends were like, yeah, we got to join PwC. We got to join Bank of America. we would never have thought of joining a startup. It kind of felt like an insult to the education we just paid for. And of course, the opposite is entirely true. So I wish I had done that. And I wish I could say that to every single university grad right now. Join a startup for a few years. You can still join a big company if you want to, but you'll never get anything better than the MBA on steroids experience you get at a startup company.
Guys, start in startups going from Tom Wright, again, Cascade, helping people measure their strategy, not only planning, but also the execution. Over 1,000 customers today paying, call it $400, $500 a month. So doing about 450 grand a month right now in revenue, up from 200 grand a month just a year ago. They're currently using SEO keywords like how to write a vision statement to drive most of their organic growth. They are bootstrapped. So they are operating right at break even, which is obviously a nice place to be. 30 people based in Australia, 10% gross revenue churn annually, 30% expansion for 120% net revenue retention. Too early to talk about CAC at scale. The sample size just isn't there. But Tom, thanks for taking us to the top.
My pleasure. Thanks, Nathan.